Yeah, it was literally the worst Christmas I have ever had. I got no good presents. I had 3 dead reindeer that Bruno killed and put on the doorstep as a present, but I think we know that wasn't a present. Santa Claus not happy. Um, yeah, just wasn't great. Mick, you?
Um, no. I was gonna do the whole soliloquy, the monologue from Gremlins when a guy got stuck in a chimney. It was the worst Christmas ever. But honestly, man, it was pretty good. Like I hung out with thing one and thing two on the back end of it, and did holiday weird stuff, and pretty much just ate a lot of food and didn't work. So thank you, corporate daddy, for giving us that week off.
Yeah, that wasn't actually a week off, Mick. We talked about that. That was
Hmm. My out of office was on, so I didn't get that email. So whose fault is that?
Audra, did you shred the slopes? Did you do the gnarlies? Is that what you did?
I did go skiing, so I was able to do that. It was fun, but I also spent a lot of time changing passwords, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So that was an
perfect segue.
Yeah,
the briefest of cold marins. My name is Ryan Kovar. This is Coffee Talk with Serge. Thank you for everyone joining us on our first run of the year. We have some good news to share with you later on. This is Mick Baccio and Audra Streetman, and we're going to be with you for about 30 to 45 minutes. We're going to go over some news. We're going to go over our thoughts on it. Mick and I are going to do a deep dive on AI and how it's smarter than he is. Or a charity challenge rather, and then we're going to do a deep dive of looking over the last year of what we thought were the biggest or most interesting stories. I think it's going to be fun. So with that, I would say let's roll clip and go to the news.
All right, so as I said before, passwords were a big component of my holiday break, and that is because LastPass notified right before the holiday of a security incident. And so this was December 22nd, which was the Thursday right before the holiday break for many people. So they sent out this notification, a blog. It involves customer password vaults that were stolen, and those are, of course, encrypted with a master key. But the interesting thing that I learned about this is that LastPass stores some data in clear text, and that includes URLs for all of your accounts that you have passwords stored. So in theory, whoever has access to these vaults, even if they're encrypted, they could form, spear phishing emails to target people further based on the URLs that are visible. And of course, if you have a weak master password, then potentially they could gain access to your account just through brute force. So that's obviously a concern, and just an uncomfortable feeling knowing that your vault, even though it's encrypted, is in the hands of someone else that it's not supposed to be. So that was one alert, but there were several over the holidays. December 31st, so just a few days later, Slack actually issued an advisory, and this was about a security issue that didn't really gain much traction until several days later. I think in January is when I first saw it. So there was a small number of employee tokens that were reportedly stolen to access Slack's GitHub external repository, and then the threat actor then downloaded private code repositories. Slack says customers were not affected and that the incident was, quote, quickly resolved. And then a few days later, on January 4th, this is when CircleCI, which is a CI/CD platform, they issued this blog post saying that they were investigating a security incident, urging customers to immediately rotate any secrets that they have stored, checking internal logs for unauthorized access, all the way back to December 21st. But this blog, interesting, ties into the whole wording of security incidents. It never says breach, compromise, intrusion, but it does say that at this point, the company is confident that there's no unauthorized actors in their system. So, Mick and Ryan, what do you make of this, and how concerned should people be if they're customers of any of these platforms?
Well, first off, we're going to do a very broad announcement here that we're not doing any victim blaming. Cybersecurity is hard. These companies have been impacted and breached. Especially over the holidays, there were a lot of incident response teams and network defenders who are probably working some pretty horrible hours. So with that caveat in mind, please know when we're talking about this, it's really about we're talking about how this impacts a network defender rather than talking about the company or whomever it is who's impacted by this breach. Saying that,
I think you could take these 3 companies out, the names, LastPass, Slack, and CircleCI, and you can replace them with any other 3 companies that provide the same services, and you can tell the same story. So yeah, to echo your point, it's just, it happens, right? So what do you do now? And to be honest, I don't even know where to start. Like, we could start with the LastPass, or save that one because I think that's the bigger story. CircleCI, Ryan, I know you tracked on this one pretty closely, and it was just, aside from, hey, roll your crypto, that's just the way it goes, or is there more to it?
Honestly, from a user point of view, I think there's a couple things. One, if you're not looking at how your credentials are being used that you're using for any third-party service with your CI/CD pipeline, you're probably going to have a bad day. So, a lot of the stuff to do with CI/CD pipeline and CircleCI is about this concept of your creds are in other places. They're being used on your behalf to optimize your coding. And you should just really have a plan in place, A, to quickly roll your creds. B, you should be looking for unusual behavior, unusual access for credentials. And C, this isn't going away. We're saying CircleCI, but to your point, just say $ DevOps. Anytime you have creds that are being used.
DevSecOps.
That's what fixed the DevOps. You put the sec and the dev with the ops.
We'll get there. 23 goals, right? 23 goals.
2023. We're going to be fine.
New year, new me.
Passwords and creds. So for me, like with LastPass, I remember years ago, I personally chose to use OnePass instead of LastPass. I wasn't comfortable with the idea of putting my creds in the cloud. So OnePass allowed me to create a local repository of files, which I then stored on Dropbox, and that I had the password to. Since then, I've actually moved to using password. Yeah, but it's different, Mick, because I'm the one who had the control of the vault. It's different.
Oh, because Dropbox has never been compromised ever.
Once again, no victim blaming. The point here is,
but again, any cloud provider, you're trusting a third party to store your things, right? So that risk is always going to be there.
Instead, I went for an open SMB server, and that's Open Samba. That's how I actually do it now. It's just easier. Yeah, for me, I look at it and
I see the ports over the internet. I can access my password file from anywhere. It's amazing. So
I do love the change, though, right? Like, it used to be there's that whole meme of people making fun of folks for having stuff written down on paper by their desk, and now, like, categorically,
you can argue with it.
Not bad.
But I think it echoes the, hey, how about we just stop using passwords? How about we move away from that system by default, and then this won't be an issue anymore?
Yeah.
I know it's a heavier lift, and it's like, right. So
Microsoft
let's have more of
done
that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Microsoft is one.
Google, right. Switch everybody over to tokens.
So FIDO 2 with, with Microsoft, it's an app on your phone that you'll get an alert, and then you type in the number that it gives you, and then there's no password. I saw Walmart also has a similar login. So those are the companies that Walmart, as like a customer, like shopping on Walmart's website, they have passwordless. So hopefully we'll see more of that, because it does, I think, help.
I mean, the reverse of this is the Apple methodology. Once again, not shaming Apple. This is a personal issue, but I forgot my Apple password, and I had to spend 45 minutes trying to find another Apple device in order to re-authenticate in after changing. So if there was a passwordless option there, I would have been pretty happy.
Did you write down your backup codes?
I did. Not this location, though.
Oh.
I was at my in-laws. And so I have those here in Dallas. It was quite the excitement. So
anywho. I have talked to some folks on the biggest ecosystems I know, Microsoft, Google, and Apple. If you kind of live in those environments, right? You have a Gmail account, if it's a Google account, you've got an iPhone, you're on one of those devices. So the built-in password manager functions in those, they're good, but they're not proper password managers. Do you think we'll see a shift from the larger vendors into more of like a, hey, you're already in the ecosystem, here's a password manager we built in? Or will it be like a product that just comes along and dies from a larger vendor, which would never happen, of course, but like, let's say it did.
Audra, you spent the winter break doing passwords. What are your thoughts?
Well, so my family actually use LastPass. My parents both used it, and I was very proud to convince them to use a password manager. So then over break, I helped them for many hours of updating all their passwords. But you know what? I reframed it in my mind. I was like, you know what? This is a great start to the new year. So I'm going to go through my accounts, make sure MFA is turned on for everything.
Sure.
So I feel extra secure now because I've had a chance to go through and update everything and check and make sure it had, you know, a strong password, because you know, especially when you're dealing with transitioning to a new password manager, it's a time-intensive process. I mean, it takes a while to go through and update all your accounts. So the good news is if you have a very strong master password, then, you know, that's at least some reassurance about the security of your vault if it's in the cloud.
I've kind of gone the way of the Googles and the Apples and the Amazons. I have to say, I love when a website has the authentication and payment done via API through one of the hosted API password methodologies. Like, and I realize this is causing that, you know, shift to, we no longer have a free and open internet. We have giant continents of providers. But I'll be damned if it isn't a lot easier when I feel like, oh, would you like to log in with your Google account? I was like, yes, I would. Like, that for me is easier. I don't know. Is that just me giving up? I also don't roll my own crypto, and I don't host my own email server.
You know, I think it's one a sign of it just makes it a lot easier to make it. You don't want to be, you just want it to work. That's basically it.
Yeah.
But I do think it opens yourself up to these issues. The reliance on a third party for the convenience, and oh my goodness, it is so convenient. This could occasionally happen, and that's a trade-off, right? So that's what we live with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not a bad idea to have an end of the year security refresher where you check your accounts for MFA and like go through. I know it takes a while, but it's not a bad thing to maybe consider of like a new thing to do on the break.
Because not only did you switch providers, right, your password manager provider, you also rolled all your passwords, right?
And my parents, yeah. So I rolled many accounts, checked MFA, but it's good to check because sometimes you have an account and they introduce MFA and then you don't turn it on.
Well, that's my question is, what percentage, I guess, from when you set it up to when you refreshed it, hey, MFA is a new thing that's available now?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, I think my parents
right. It is a good question.
Because the thing is, my parents have a company, right, and they have an employee that uses some of these accounts. And when you're on different workstations, sometimes, you know, if it has an MFA alert, the person would have to call my mom and be like, "Oh, what's the code you just got texted to your phone?" So if they have the option of like a one-time login, remember this device, that always helps with that. But in cases where they don't have that option, I think MFA turned off, and then I was able, it's all good to go now. So I think that was one thing I ran into. But I do know that I enabled MFA for several accounts. I couldn't give you a percentage because it was just a long week, but yeah, it's good to know now at least. I feel I can sleep better at night knowing that.
I think if there's any takeaway before we move on to the next very, very important story that impact so many Americans, is that if you're not looking for credentials being misused in your environment, whether it be for DevSecOps or for purpose side, like, you know, people are always asking us, where do we start threat hunting? Where do we start looking? Where do we start looking for SIMs? Like,
the calls inside the house.
Yep. You don't hack the cloud, you log in. So start looking for the credentials. Audra, what do we have next? All
right. Well, this is can be devastating for some people that enjoy chicken sandwiches, but Chick-fil-A is investigating some suspicious activity on some customer accounts. So the company said that this is not a cause of its internal systems, but they're asking customers to just look for unusual activity, like any mobile orders that they didn't place, or people other than themselves using their loyalty points for free food. So apparently before the holiday, there was reports about accounts being breached, Chick-fil-A accounts in credential stuffing attacks. So Chick-fil-A has since disabled the ability to create new accounts or to use like throwaway email addresses that were reportedly used by people to buy food using account information that wasn't their own. So just something to keep an eye out for. And if you have payment information on the app, that's another thing, another cause for concern. If there is unauthorized access to your account. So, and of course, you don't necessarily want people to know your whole order history either, right, Ryan?
Yeah, that's exactly it. We were just discussing discussing how disgusting Audra's orders were. Her choices of pickles.
It's not disgusting. It's just the volume. Like it's just
an impressive volume.
Yeah, it's just we were all shocked.
Well, actually, the interesting thing about this is I used to have the Chick-fil-A app. I used to have an account, and then I deleted it because I realized that I didn't use it, very often. And I was like, anytime there's an account I don't use very often, I'll delete it, and then I'll reach out to the company to delete my account. And I actually did that with Chick-fil-A. I guess I don't know.
Hire you as like a personal data janitor, like just go through.
It sounds like a lot of work, but just here and there, I'll just look at my phone and be like, what apps do I not use? And then I'll just delete them, just kind of like a.
I mean, I know I'm in the minority here with the Pixel, but every basically week it gives me an alert of what apps I have not used and which ones I should uninstall and have permissions removed from. We brought up this story partly, we normally focus on things that are basically affecting enterprises, focusing those areas. But this is another, I think it ties with the first story, right? Like these are creds again. Like we're going to have people concerned about that sort of aspect. Like they're not 100% sure credential stuffing once again. So if your LastPass was popped and your Chick-fil-A suddenly starts spitting out Chick-fil-A Deluxe Spicy and you're just you're a nuggets type of person, watch out. It's just, watch those creds. It's all about the creds.
I think it goes to, and the weird thing is that this attack actually did not work on Sunday. So I don't know if it was a timestamp in the coding or something in the credentials. But
it's always on Sunday, right? When you're like, man, I'm in the mood for a chicken sandwich. And you're like, oh, wait.
For those non-Americans or those who have not had a Chick-fil-A experience, it is probably the largest fast food franchise that is not open on Sundays due to the owner's personal faith. But it's quite, I just love the concept, Mick. They just turn off the servers too.
But the thing is, this is you're not going after folks' accounts really so much. You're not trying to siphon their bank accounts or anything like that. You're just trying to get free chicken. Like it's just, I think it's a pretty low hanging fruit, but it illustrates the point. It's a vulnerability that exists. Just to use throwaway emails, I think is pretty ingenious. So I do know, some folks out there that are truly disheartened by the news. Their status might go up or down. Maybe they'll get some reward. But it's an illustration of, data's out there, data's compromised. How important is this on a grander scale? Like this compared to LastPass, compared to CircleCI, they're all examples of data breaches, but like different scales, right?
Well, and I go back to Cyber Wu-Tang, cream, creds rule everything around me, right? So
and chicken rules. All right.
Cream chicken. It's a good side. All right, Audra, what's number 3?
So CyberScoop published a story last month quoting anonymous insiders at CISA who are worried about the agency's priorities distracting from its mission. So this article is based on conversations with 14 current and former CISA employees and 18 people familiar with the agency's internal operations. And one of the concerns was if the agency was focusing too much on Jen Easterly as the figurehead of the organization, right? Like the face to CISA instead of, its cyber mission of securing, for cybersecurity just in general. So I was curious, what your take is on this, because I know obviously it's a conversation starter, right? And I saw a lot of responses to this on social media, and I'm curious what you think.
We had a pretty vigorous debate about this for internal Slack. And I think we came down, at least on our team, would anyone know who CISA was? Can anyone name the U.S. CERT director previous to Chris Krebs and Jen Easterly?
Name any CERT director. Or not, but that's the thing, was like, we're kind of dinosaur is before CISA, U.S. CERT, when that was stood up, I gotta be honest, it's a boring job. There's no glory in it. There's no publicity in it. It's just public service. It's a public service job. just in the cyber field, there are hundreds of different categories that are just like it. And to Ryan's point, before, Chris Krebs, before Director Easterly came along, it puts a face, it puts a personality, and putting that behind a government organization, I think it has been learned that works better than not having it.
Oh yeah.
Just to have a relatable face behind anything it does wonders for it. Now, does a spotlight shine too much on her versus the mission? In my opinion, no. I mean, because the mission's boring and no one really cares about it anyway. So any attention to it at all, I think, is a good thing. But that's just from my lens and my experience with DHS.
There's a similar organization in the UK called NCSC, and the two, I don't want to say figureheads, but the two leaders there that immediately come to mind are Lindy Cameron, she's a phenomenal human, and then Dr. Ian Levy, who just recently left and went to Amazon in a very senior role. And it's the same sort of thing. Like, if there's been one thing we've learned on search, trying to be more out front, is there is value to faces like us three being representative of an organization and a brand, and to build that knowledge. But I think also people are able to rally around Jen. Like, I don't think there's a reason why, there's a reason why there's more funding, there's more attention, there's more Capitol Hill knowledge, is partly because of Jen's leadership. I'm sure that the people, who are quoted have their purposes. We talked about this briefly. Like, I do wonder, is there inherent sexism in this as well? Like, because she's a woman, are people concerned about that? I don't know. I do wonder if they would have said the same. I don't remember this being talked about, Chris Krebs and his socks. But
I mean,
again, he was fired.
Fair, he was incompetent, and that's why he was fired. Okay, clearly,
exactly.
That's
clearly incompetent. Chris,
no other reason.
I don't care how beautiful your hair is. I don't care how well manufactured your socks are. Sorry.
How nice you are. You just no. That's why you were fired by tweet. All right.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you both are saying about you need a face to tie into the organization. And I think Jen Easterly has done a fantastic job from what I've seen in terms of getting out there and being present for a lot of important events. She's, spoken at a number of conferences and is very active in the community. And I think that's part of the job of being a leader of an organization like this, and raising awareness, and the whole MFA campaign that she has about, and the Shields Up. I feel like she's great at pushing out those messages. And, I associate CISA with Rubik's Cubes now. And, so I have, these memories of when I've heard Jen Easterly speak, and I think that helps reinforce what she's saying, right? That's just my take on it. And I can't speak about what morale is like inside the agency or anything detailed like that. So that could be a whole nother thing. But in terms of from a public point of view, I think that it's been a really great job.
100%.
I think that she is fantastic in the role that she is in. I think the team that surrounds her are what makes her so good. She is not a subject matter expert in something like SBOM or CICD supply chain, but the person who will feed her the information and break that down is so good that it makes it digestible. And she is the perfect person for the role that she's in. So I think, her team is so good around her, it makes her that much better. And anything to kind of highlight what a blue team federal work is not great. It is not exciting for the most part. No one really cares what you do. Oh, you stop stuff from happening. Yep, that's your job. Just keep doing it. That's the only thing you hear about. Like, you didn't do that job one time and OPM happened? Well,
There was a great phrase for that, right, for politics. I remember voting once, and my mom said, you don't vote for the politician, you vote for their administration. And look carefully at the people they're going to bring into power, because they're the ones who are actually making the majority of the decisions. And the people that we meet and we talk to, Brian, James, like those sort of folks over at CISA, like they're all phenomenal. And they make a difference. And they're there partly because of Jen. And they're able to execute because of her, design and leadership. And she'll be gone probably for, next administration, right? It's a 4-year kind of gig. So, I'm sure the people who were quoted had reasons, but I think we're all Team Easterly here. So definitely not Team Krebs. Screw that guy.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and transition now to our upcoming events, because we have a few coming up around the corner. Now that it's 2023, we have our predictions webinar with Ryan and Mick. Both of you will be talking about the Splunk predictions for security, and that's on January 31st. And we'll have more information about the time for the, actually, I think we do have a link. I can share that.
Yeah, why don't you whack that into the LinkedIn when you have a second.
Okay, great. And we also have the report, so I'll put both links for the webinar.
Those of you watching on YouTube will post that in the comments here in a minute.
Yep. And then we also have SANS CTI Summit in DC. And Ryan, that's something that you're very involved with.
Yeah, I've been on the advisory committee now for about 5 years. I think it is one of the premier threat intelligence and one of the only threat intelligence dedicated conferences in the world. What I like about it is that it is very much subject matter focused. For those of you who focus on or who work in cybersecurity and threat intelligence, a lot of times the two are mushed together. And if you are actually a threat intel analyst, you know that they're not the same. And so the fun thing about CTI Summit is we work very hard to not only have your normal sort of threat intel talks around adversaries and APTs, but also practical ones around things like RFIs and how to actually run the administration of a mature threat intel environment. Mick, why are you smirking? What is your...
I'm just thinking because it's you said it's cybersecurity, but it's not. And I'm like, but it is. And I agree, right? I disagree, but I agree. It's that gift from the interview, like same but different. It's the cybersecurity and threat intel are like two sides of the same coin, but it's really the same coin. It's a weird shape, like a pyramid almost.
Well, and I think someone just went to a CTI course. Is that true, Audra?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I learned from the SANS CTI course with Katie Nichols as an instructor, she's amazing, is that threat intelligence ties into every area of a security team, right? Like incident response, for instance, the data collected from that feeds threat intelligence, and then threat intelligence helps inform incident response. And it's like this cycle, and it applies to all areas of security. So it is its own area, but it's also connected to every other area of the industry. So it's kind of unique in that way, is I guess the takeaway.
The other thing we're going to announce today, we have some big news. We're going to be going every week from now on, starting March 1st. So starting the first week of March, every Tuesday, there's going to be something from Surge. There we go. Tuesday. Lovely, lovely Tuesday graphic there. So we're still doing Coffee Talk with Surge every other week, but the alternating weeks, we're going to be doing a more technical discussion or a leadership discussion with third parties, partners, folks like that, people internal to Splunk. Maybe we'll have Chris Krebs on to determine if there's any validity to him being fired or not. We'll see Jen if she wants to come in. We have those connections. So stay tuned for every Tuesday ongoing, starting the first week of March. So that's what's happening there. And I think we're ready. For a charity countdown. Let's roll clip.
And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-second charity challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck!
All right, so the topic today is ChatGPT. And if you're not familiar, this is OpenAI's artificial intelligence chatbot that is being used for all kinds of use cases. If you want help writing an email or an essay, it can help you with that. It could also help you write a Python script that we've learned. There's some reports that it may help with creating malware, potentially. That's one concern within the cybersecurity industry. So I'm curious what each of your takes is on this new technology and kind of what it represents for cybersecurity. Where do you see it being maybe a good thing or maybe a bad thing in terms of aiding cyber criminals? So who wants to go first with that?
Well, what's our charity today, Audra?
So today's charity is the Global Emancipation Network. And this is actually a cause that is very close with Sergio Caltagirone over at Dragos. He works in threat intelligence. And this is a cause that he cares a lot about and has been promoting. There's actually a calendar. It's the Cuckoo's Egg calendar, and it has
Cuckoo.
Cuckoo.
The cuckoo. The cuckoo.
What? One more time?
Cuckoo. No? Cuckoo?
No, that's not how you say cuckoo.
Wow.
Let's move on. Anyway, there is a link that I am going to put in the chat with
You're gonna have to add that to your video.
This calendar.
Revel cuckoo.
I am just going to log off now.
What's that Balkan country again? Bosnia.
Herzegovina. Words are hard, guys. Okay, words are hard. We need the.
Countries are super hard.
Isn't there a ChatGPT?
Oh yeah. Who's going to go first, Audra? Me or Mick? New year, new you.
Yeah. So, Mick, let's go with you first, if you want to.
Okay.
Your take.
All right, let's start a timer. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, there is a brand new development in the world of cybersecurity called ChatGPT. And it's about to revolutionize the industry as we know it. This is like a AI Swiss Army knife with a tool for every cyber problem. With ChatGPT in the job, hackers will be shaking their boots. It's like AI virtual security guard standing at the gates of our cyber network and saying, I'm sorry, you don't have the correct clearance. And the pesky phishers, ChatGPT is like the Geneva Convention for email, protecting us from their deceitful phishing attacks. But it's not just the bad guys that are feeling the impact. Even the most experienced IT professionals are feeling a little timepieced by this advanced AI. It's like ChatGPT is saying, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't let you do that. But I think it is all for the better. With ChatGPT in the job, we can rest easy knowing that our cyber networks are protected like a precious Swiss watch. And that's no bite of information. Also, ChatGPT wrote this, so I think that's why I'm going to win.
Oh, wow. Plot twist. Okay, Ryan, what is your counter argument?
Well, funny you say that. Let's roll timer here. So ChatGPT, more like Mick is going to get automated out of a job. Am I right? More specifically, this is going to get the people who've held me hostage for giving me regexes. They're just going to go away now because I can go to ChatGPT. For those of you who haven't been keeping up or living under a rock, OpenAI, famous for DALL-E, released ChatGPT, which is basically off of a large family of language models, meaning it is probably nicer than Mick and almost certainly nicer. The search team has already been using ChatGPT extensively, but mostly in jest, trying to see if we can do cyber sea shanties. But recently, Shannon Davis, our researcher out of Melbourne, Australia, decided to try if he could use it for some actual Python scripts, and it worked very quickly and faster than he could have written. So will ChatGPT change the world? Absolutely. I see a future where blogs, documentation are written by ChatGPT, basic scripts, all sorts of things. Am I scared? No, I'm in my 40s. I'm going to retire before AI takes off completely.
Wow. Okay. I need people to weigh in and let me know what they think, because that was a close call with that.
What do we have here? We got some people. I know there's a little bit of delay, so we'll vamp here. We'll look through the comments. So say who you think wins or not. A couple minutes. But Mick, did you really use ChatGPT to write that?
Oh, 100%. I pasted it to Drew this morning.
I was like 95% sure.
You know, I think based on that point alone, I'm going to pick Mick as the winner, just because you thought to use it to write your argument. So on that basis alone.
That's solid.
Yeah, Chris weighed in and says
it's a tie. We don't need him now? Is that kind of where you're going? Are you saying we can just we have had requests. I believe Mike here, Rodriguez, has brought up there has been very little Mac this round. Could we just chat GPT Mac?
We probably could. He's actually in a suitcase. It's a whole other story. But you know, I think ChatGPT, I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I saw what Shannon was working on, you know, downloading every extension out there quickly. And I think it's going to be one of the things where it's out there, it's here, whether it's good, whether it's bad, we'll find out. I don't know, in a year or two, less than that.
Yeah.
I just can't believe how fast it was. Like, it wasn't gradual. Like, we've seen AI. We were talking about this the other day. Like, we've seen AI. Rick Holland and I were talking about this with a friend who's also on the SANS CTI Summit. And we were discussing how AI has been going around for a while, but it wasn't a thing. Mm-hmm. And now it's a thing. And like, it just came out of nothing into like, oh, wow, this is actually, and it's free and I can just do these things. And holy crap, I can write a Python script using ChatGPT effectively and have it iterate until it works. That is stunning.
Yep.
Mick, you're going into convulsions over there. What's happening?
Oh no, I'm sorry. When Rick Holland, I couldn't hear you name drop. It's just over the sound of that dropping. It was just.
It's called giving credit, Mick.
That's fair.
So,
but to your point, it's like when IoT first became a thing. Oh, here's all this amazing thing we can do now. Let's not think ahead. And cyber's pretty good at that. So it's like the science fiction book Leviathan about the tale of this computer system taking over the planet and eradicating humanity. So we named our product Leviathan, and
everything went fine.
Yep.
Everything is fine.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and I think AI is going to become obviously a much bigger topic moving forward. And this was a huge moment in terms of AI development, and it'll be interesting to see
how curve spiked really fast. Like I think one might call it sentience, but
Well, okay, so here's the thing, right? Like I think it's important with AI to be aware of its limits and also the biases that are often baked into AI, and that we shouldn't be too reliant on it, is my opinion, or be aware of its limitations, right? So I could talk on and on about that, but we have other things to discuss, right?
Let's go into our final section here while I give $120 to our lovely charity of the day.
And now we talk about things that just happen to be on our minds with who's ever here, because we made this up before I knew who'd accept my meeting invite.
All right, year in review.
Year in review. What do we have?
Well, a lot happened in the last year. It's kind of it's strange to look back to the beginning of 2022 and remember things that happened, and you're like, wait, that was only a year ago. It feels like an eternity because so much has happened.
Well, luckily, I'm still writing down 2022 in all my calendars and emails, so it's working out for me great.
Yes.
Yeah, so January a year ago, we were, what was that thing that happened, Ryan?
Log4Shell? SolarWinds?
Was there an invasion?
Rebel? What happened in January? Sorry. COVID?
Well, Log4Shell was still a thing, that's for sure. Still is.
What happened in January, Mick?
Wasn't the invasion of Ukraine in 2022 in January?
Oh, I think it was February.
That's what's going on.
Was it January or February? I thought it was February.
February.
Either way, early 2022.
February, March.
I thought it was February 20 something.
We have some time left. We all said we're going to pick one or two big subjects. My number one for February 24, February 22. And there's someone who was in the military, so I appreciate that, Riri. The aspects here for me, I think Ukraine was the biggest story for cybersecurity, because everyone went in saying, oh my God, Russians are going to cause unmitigated disaster on Western companies. Then it started backfilling where people were like, oh, maybe Russia isn't that bad at or good at cyber afterwards. And then it went into like, oh, they're actually doing all this stuff. Personally, we at Surge have always maintained the line that Russia, I believe, has fantastic offensive cyber capabilities. I think we saw some aspects of that. If you look at the pipe dream that Dragos discovered and kind of disrupted before it could actually be active, I think that was a huge deal. Personally, I think the rules of engagement for Russian cyber operations were probably confined to Ukraine. And thirdly, if you look at Europe, if you take away the American bias that we inherently have, there were a lot of cybersecurity attacks in Europe: Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Germany. These places.
What's the other place, Audra?
Yeah, what's that Balkan country?
Bosnia?
Yeah, there's something else for the formal name of that.
Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know. I feel like those countries were the cuckoo of the egg for cyber. And I don't think it's going away. I think that people just found out that kinetic warfare is much more important than cyber warfare. And if you can take out a missile, if you can use a missile to completely destroy a factory, or you can disrupt their ability to manufacture for a week, if you can send a missile, you probably are, at least for me. I mean, that was for me. Ukraine was eye-opening, and I think it reset people's expectations of doomsday. Joseph asked, is this the first time cyber operations were carried out as an act of war during an actual physical war? I don't believe so. I think Georgia, the invasion of Georgia during the Olympics was also a case where Russia did cyber ops during an actual physical invasion. I'm sure there's more cases of this as well. Probably mostly in Eastern Europe. Sorry, so was that Audra?
Cold War. I don't know if you'd count that as a physical war, but definitely,
Certainly we're proxy wars.
Cold War is like the war on drugs. It's a thing, but it's not really a thing. It's just something we keep saying over and over.
Qualifying as conflict, right? So it's.
I can't remember which side of the Iron Curtain was that country. What country was it again, Audra?
I am never gonna live this one down, am I?
No.
Anyway, moving on.
What was your number one, Audra? What was your number one cybersecurity event for 2022?
Oh, I had 3. Well, first thing I thought of was Lapsus, right? The extortion that targeted like NVIDIA, Rockstar Games, all of that. That was an interesting story, especially since we found out it was a bunch of teenagers, right? Like in the UK, arrested for that. There was also spyware was a big ongoing story and still is with NSO Group, which I believe a court recently struck down. NSO Group's argument that it's, I can put the link in the chat for this. Yeah, immunity. That's the word I was looking for. Words are hard, guys, right? And then the third one I had was the economy, right? Because just in the last several months, we've seen a lot of stories about layoffs in the tech industry, and that's obviously impacted people who work in cybersecurity as well. And so that's something that's ongoing, and I'm hoping the worst is behind us, but hopefully, we'll see what happens with that in the future. With
Mick, what about you? Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
For me, I think the big one for me was Okta and all the related incidents that came from that. And again,
not to put on Okta, right? It's like LastPass, Okta, like this move of putting your authentication into the cloud has not
somewhere else, like the Okta, Twilio, and everything underneath that kind of provider. Like it's a thing you need. It's a necessity in a cloud environment. You can't operate without that. But if that gets compromised, well, right, it just demonstrates like how fragile the entire ecosystem is if one thing goes wrong. Just a dependency chain. I think that was highlighted for me, just how widespread that is. It would be akin to like, hey, if AWS East 1 goes down one day, you're gonna notice.
Or like if the world's most popular operating system had a remote code exploit and 9 billion endpoints were like this is my only issue with that, right? Like people are making such a big deal out of it, but like we've been dealing with this for 30 years. Like the ubiquity and the like 1 or 2 major providers like have a cybersecurity issue. We're still dealing with Eternal Blue.
So I think that was really eye-opening. Runner-up for me was the Uber data breach, not the breach itself, but the following court case and conviction of Joe Sullivan. I thought that was new to me. So I think those are the 2 highlights for me in 2022 that stuck out the most. The rest, like ransomware was ransomware, right? It got really, really bad. More schools targeted, more hospitals targeted than there were the year previously. I don't think that's going to get any better. But we'll talk about that more on the 31st now, won't we?
Yes, predictions. Those are our predictions, which is a great way to end it off here. We're at about 45 minutes, give or take. This has been phenomenal. We'll be back in not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Although I believe Mick, you'll be here still for that one. So
sure.
We'll have a good time. And then once again, remember March 1st, the first week of March, we're going to go to every single Tuesday, and we'll have more things to announce about that as well. So stick around. If you're in DC, come by and give me a heads up. I'll be in DC. Mick will be DC on the 31st. And we'll talk to you all then. Until then, let's roll credits. Let's get out of here.
Surge.